My mother tore through my guest list 3 days before my wedding and killed all 88 invitations in my name. "Don't humiliate yourself clapping for her," she told them. Everyone stayed home. At the rehearsal dinner, in front of the whole restaurant, she snatched up my untouched place card. "See, even paper knows better than to sit with you." People laughed. She beamed. On my wedding day, I walked in alone past a wall of empty chairs. I didn't cry. Then the side doors opened. "My name is Nora Dolan. I'm 34, and the woman who emptied a church to break me had no idea who my grandfather had already asked to fill it." It started with a phone that wouldn't stop lighting up. Cousins, a great-aunt, my father's old fishing partner, all saying some version of, "So sorry, honey, can't make it." I'd mailed those 88 cream envelopes myself, hand-addressed over 2 nights with my grandfather's brass pocket watch ticking beside me. By Wednesday, every single yes had curdled into a no. I called my mother. "I handled the RSVPs for you, sweetheart," she said, folding laundry on the other end. "I let people off the hook. Nobody wants to drive 3 hours to watch you play dress-up." She hung up before I finished processing what she'd just admitted. To understand what she was really protecting, you have to understand my grandfather. Warren Castell built a lumber supply company out of 1 truck and 40 years of getting up before the sun. At home, he was just the one who saved me the seat, while my mother and her siblings, Corin and Gerald, spent their whole lives circling him like planes waiting to land, keeping score out loud over who called more, who visited more. I was never in that competition. "You're the only one who doesn't want anything from me," he told me once. "You have no idea how rare that makes you." I thought he was being sentimental. He was taking notes. I became a hospice nurse. My mother's little job, she called it, for 11 years. When cancer came for Warren 2 years ago, I moved my shifts and became his full-time nurse for 26 months, unpaid, while my mother came for holidays and photographs and my aunt and uncle argued over the estate in the kitchen while I changed his sheets down the hall. One December afternoon, 4 months before he died, he handed me a sealed cream envelope. The same cream as my wedding invitations, though I didn't know that yet. "Don't open this until the morning after your wedding," he said. "Whatever happens between now and then, and something will, you keep this closed." Warren died in April with my hand around his. His last real sentence to me was, "You were the only one who stayed." At the funeral, before his body was even cold, I watched my mother corner my uncle by the coat closet asking about the wills reading. It had been delayed. Some instruction from Warren about timing. My mother's face stopped grieving and started calculating, right there. Owen proposed in May in Warren's old workshop. I got a few weeks of simply being happy before my mother offered, out of nowhere, to help manage the RSVPs. I gave her the login, starved for her warmth enough not to question why it had suddenly appeared. Within a week, the calls started. My cousin June called me crying. My mother had told her I was ashamed to have poor relations at the wedding in front of Owen's family. It wasn't spite. It was custom built, person by person. I drove to my mother's house and caught her and my aunt at the kitchen table, laptop open, laughing as they clicked through my guest list. "Declined," my mother typed. "That's the last of the far cousins." When I asked why, she cupped my face with a hand that had never held it in kindness and said, "Because a daughter no one claims is a daughter no one protects. Remember that, sweetheart." That night, I checked the admin log on my own wedding website. 88 RSVPs flipped to declined in 90 minutes, all from a single device that wasn't mine. Then I found the family group chat I'd been muted in for years. Weeks of my mother posting concerned little updates about how unstable I'd become since the funeral, how the family was worried about the influence I'd had at his bedside. A slow character assassination I'd been too tired to read. The next morning, a lawyer named Ruth Holleran called. "Your grandfather left instructions to make certain you would not stand alone on your wedding day, whatever it took," she said. "Bring the envelope. Do not open it early." Then, gently, "He knew, dear. Now go get married." I didn't understand yet how large the plan actually was. Over the next days, my aunt told people at a grocery store I'd been arrested for stealing from Warren. My uncle showed up with a waiver, pressuring me to sign away my claim quietly. My hospice supervisor called me into her office. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint with the state nursing board accusing me of financially exploiting my dying patient. It named Warren. It named me. My license. 11 years, built entirely on my own, was suddenly on the line 3 days before my wedding. 2 days out, I drove to Warren's farmhouse and found my aunt and uncle loading a rental truck with his desk, his tools, the ledgers his bookkeeper had kept for 30 years. Securing family assets before the vultures come, my uncle said. I said only one thing, quietly, as he passed. You know he's watching all of this, Gerald. He laughed. He's in the ground. Nobody's watching. At the cemetery that afternoon, I found fresh flowers on Warren's grave that weren't mine, with a rain-warped card. Warren, the yard remembers. We've got her. S and D and the boys. I had no idea what it meant. The next day, a stranger in a work jacket stopped his cart next to mine in the grocery store. You won't be alone, miss, he said. Whatever you've heard. Then he was gone. My cousin June finally told me the shape of it on the phone. My mother had been telling the whole family for 2 months that I'd manipulated a dying man, working to make sure that when the will finally read, nobody would stand up for me. This wedding thing, June said. I think it's the finale. Her own brother had pulled out that same afternoon after my mother threatened to cut him from the family entirely. I sat on my kitchen floor and cried until there was nothing left, because it was working. My whole side of the aisle was down to 4 people. Owen sat beside me on the linoleum and said, Your grandfather never asked for anything he couldn't deliver. Either he was wrong about you for the first time in his life, or your mother's about to find out she wasn't the only one planning something. At the rehearsal dinner 2 nights later, my mother lifted my untouched place card in front of the whole restaurant. Even paper knows better than to sit with you, she announced, and my aunt laughed sharp and pleased. An old man named Sal, one of Warren's oldest friends from the lumberyard, stood up slowly and said, in a voice that needed no microphone, Paula, sit down and shut your mouth. Your father would be ashamed of the neck on you. My mother's smile flickered for exactly 1 second before she smoothed it back into place. I filed that flicker away. It wasn't anger. It was fear. Friday afternoon, she came to my apartment alone, no audience, which was itself a warning. Whatever Holleran tells you Monday, you'll sign the papers Gerald showed you, she said, hands trembling. You have no idea what you're sitting on. Then, for 1 unguarded second, the mask came all the way off, and underneath was pure terror. You were always his favorite, she whispered, and now he's reached out of the ground to hand you everything and leave me with nothing. A good daughter would share. I finally understood the whole shape of it that night. She wasn't at my wedding to watch me fail for its own sake. She needed the isolation to hold long enough to force me into signing before Monday's reading. Because if the church filled instead, the will would read to a family who'd just watched Warren's favorite be worth standing up for. Saturday came bright and hot. Owen's side of the church filled to bursting. My side stayed a desert of 88 empty chairs, each with a name card still taped on from the spring when I still believed they'd all come. 10 minutes before the ceremony, the coordinator told me Ruth Holleran might not make it in time, and my mother was out front personally turning away every guest who tried to defy her. Everything I'd been quietly leaning on for a week, the flowers, the stranger, Ruth's promise, turned to paper in an instant. I sat on the little velvet bench and thought about a dying man telling me to walk in anyway, empty or full. I'm walking in, I said, and my voice didn't shake. My father, who had insisted on walking me despite my mother's orders, told me quietly that he no longer understood what she'd become. The chapel doors opened. My side of the aisle was a full desert of white chairs and trembling name cards. I walked toward Owen with my chin level, refusing to give her my face. Then, halfway down, both side doors opened at once. Dozens of people in dark formal suits filed in, quiet and unhurried, led by a silver-haired woman in charcoal gray carrying a cream envelope closed with red wax, Ruth Holleran. Behind her came Warren's entire other world. His foreman, his bookkeeper, Frances, dabbing her eyes with a forgotten work glove, His oldest friends, Sal and Denny, leading them in like men who'd waited their whole lives for the job. Behind them, cousins who'd been lied to and were only now learning the truth, filing in slow and certain, each finding a chair with a name card like it had been waiting for them all along. All 88 chairs filled. Through the front windows, I watched my mother's face go slack in the parking lot, watched her hand shoot out and seize my father's arm through the car window as the exact impossible thing she'd spent 2 months preventing unfolded in front of her. At the reception, Sal finally told me the truth. The winter before he died, Warren had sat the whole lumberyard crew down in the break room. "Told us his own kids were circling," Sal said, "and asked us to fill her side. Every empty seat, no matter what. Made us shake on it, one at a time. Half that room had shaken his hand on a promise about me. And in the middle of my own reception, relative by relative, my family reconstructed the lie out loud, realizing in real time that my mother had personally engineered every single decline, every rumor, every excuse. There is no forgiveness colder than the forgiveness of people who've just learned they were used as props. Monday morning, 10 o'clock, Ruth Holleran laid the sealed envelope on an oak table between my mother, my aunt, my uncle, and me. Warren's will was airtight. Sound mind, independent witnesses, a physician's capacity letter 14 months before his death. The bulk of the estate, the farmhouse, the land, his controlling interest in the company, just over $4 million, went entirely to me. But there was a condition attached to his 3 children's smaller bequests, $100,000 each, forfeit in full if any of them was shown, by clear documented evidence, to have deliberately isolated, humiliated, or sabotaged me after his death. "I set this test in love," Warren had written, "and I pray all 3 of them pass it. But if my executor is reading this aloud, then at least one of them did not." Ruth laid out the evidence one document at a time. The admin log, 11 signed statements from guests who never declined, the venue coordinator's written account, witnesses from the rehearsal dinner. My mother had failed the test loudly, publicly, and in writing, her share forfeited entirely to me. My aunt and uncle, despite everything, hadn't crossed quite that specific line. Their bequests stood, which would go on to poison the 3 siblings against each other for years, requiring nothing further from me at all. I could have stopped there. Instead, I opened Warren's last letter, the one from my closet, and read it aloud to the whole room. That the money was never the real gift. That the real gift was finally getting to choose my own family, with proof in writing that I'd been worth choosing all along. He asked me to be kinder to my mother than she'd ever been to me, not for her sake, but so it wouldn't take root in me the way it had in her. So instead of keeping her forfeited share, I put it into a trust that would pay her mortgage and medical bills for the rest of her life. Untouchable, unleverageable, a monthly reminder forever that the daughter she tried to erase chose to protect her anyway. "It isn't charity," I told her. "It's a boundary. This is the last thing you'll ever be able to take from me, because I'm the one giving it. Here's what I learned. The people who are supposed to save you a seat will sometimes clear the whole room instead, and that was never proof you were unlovable. But the ones who stay, an old man at a lumberyard, a cousin who won't stop crying, a lawyer keeping a dead man's promise, those are your real family. Blood built the empty church. Love filled it." If this story moved you, drop your city or state in the comments. I read every one. And if you want more real stories like this every week, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. It genuinely means everything to this channel. Until next time, go find the people who'd fill your empty chairs too.